Let's jump right into this explainer. Imagine a scenario where raw, trusting ambition collides head-on with polished, ruthless exploitation. We're unpacking a truly devastating true story today. A dual betrayal that basically serves as a masterclass on how one man's fundamental trust was weaponized against him. It really forces us to look at what happens when our deepest vulnerabilities are exposed, not just in a boardroom, but in the absolute foundation of our personal lives.
We're kicking things off right at the boiling point with this chilling defense. Ideas are not intellectual property. That's Victor Harrington. He's a polished corporate predator who ended up stealing our protagonist's life trajectory, not once, but twice. You see, Victor didn't just casually lift a business model. He zeroed in on a vulnerable, deeply trusting person, invited him in, and then legally pulled the rug out from under him, just because he could. This cold, calculated response, it perfectly sums up the total betrayal of human trust at the heart of this story.
Fast forward a few years, and our protagonist, Daniel, gets hit with this absolute emotional gut punch. 4 years I suffered for you, and the first person you see is Victor. Just imagine discovering the woman you sacrificed absolutely everything to put through university was leaving you. And not just leaving you, but marrying the exact man who derailed your entire life years prior. This captures that precise, shattering moment when the ultimate betrayal of trust came completely full circle for Daniel.
So how in the world did we arrive at this horrifying double betrayal? Well, it helps to look at the stark contrast between these two guys. On one side we have Daniel. He's gritty, he's honest, he's out there carrying cement bags, but he has this brilliantly sharp mind, operating purely on trust and extending that same honesty to everyone around him. And on the flip side, there's Victor Harrington. Polished, predatory, navigating the business world with this warm, practiced smile that's custom designed to extract exactly what he wants from unprotected, trusting people.
Let's rewind a bit to see how this started. Years prior, Daniel had quietly sketched out this brilliant logistics master plan. The goal was to bypass the middleman entirely, connecting building material suppliers straight to small contractors. It was a literal blueprint to control market distribution, all mapped out in a dog-eared notebook he kept under his mattress. But he made one fatal mistake. He pitched the whole thing to Victor with zero legal protection. Daniel trusted that a firm handshake and a shared vision actually meant something. But for Victor, that trust was just a weapon waiting to be used.
The timeline of this first betrayal is just brutal. After 3 meetings packed with warm, assuring promises of a long-term partnership, Victor ruthlessly hijacked the uncopyrighted business. He launched it under his own name within months, racking up investors and industry praise. And when Daniel went to Victor's office to confront him about this massive betrayal of his trust, Victor didn't just brush him off. A few days later, 3 men showed up at Daniel's home in the dead of night, broke his ribs, split his lip, and violently told him to stay in his lane.
Which brings us to a terrifying question. What do you do when you have absolutely no legal contract to protect your stolen idea? When Daniel finally dragged himself to the police and a lawyer, the harsh reality really set in. Without a single piece of documentation, the lawyer basically told him he had to swallow the loss. The whole idea, the distribution network, the potential wealth, legally, it all belonged to the guy who betrayed him. Daniel was left with nothing but broken ribs and a useless notebook that meant literally nothing to the legal system.
But here's where Daniel's character really shines. He absolutely refused to let that bitterness consume him. About 2 years later, he met a woman named Grace at a local church program. They bonded over a shared background of real struggle, and Daniel ended up pouring his entire soul into funding her university education. Grace had been accepted to study business administration, but she didn't have a dime to her name. So Daniel, the guy who just had his own future violently stolen, decided to sponsor a new future from the ashes, putting his complete trust in their shared vision.
Now, you really have to grasp the sheer scale of Daniel's relentless grinding over these 4 years. We are not talking about spare change here. He sold his only television. He took on these exhausting weekend shifts moving heavy goods and literally survived on gari and groundnut just to close the gap in her tuition. Every single naira he made beyond basic bare-bones survival went straight to her. He sacrificed his present comfort entirely to build her future, completely trusting in their partnership.
But here's the thing about university. It's not just about the education, it's about the exposure. As Grace started attending these high-level corporate networking events for her internship, her whole perspective began to shift away from the gritty, sacrificial life she was sharing with Daniel. Her phone calls started getting shorter. The topics of conversation shifted. It really begs the question, what exactly happens when newfound exposure collides head-on with predatory wealth?
Well, just 2 weeks before her graduation, we get our answer, and it unfolds devastatingly fast.
Victor Harrington just so happened to attend a networking event hosted by Grace's internship firm. He spots Grace across the room and pursues her with that exact same focused, predatory energy he used in business, dangling access, attention, and massive wealth. Grace, who is completely unaware of Victor's history with Daniel, just stops calling Daniel. She quickly chooses Victor's polished, glamorous world over the man who is literally skipping meals to put her in that very room.
Eventually, Daniel's best friend Joseph uncovers the affair, and Daniel goes to confront Grace. He lays absolutely everything bare. He tells her the horrific truth of what Victor had done to him: the stolen business, the goons, the broken ribs, the totally shattered trust. And how does she respond to learning that her new wealthy boyfriend is the architect of her sponsor's deepest trauma? She looks at him and delivers this cold, rehearsed line: "I'm sorry that happened to you." Past tense. Zero accountability. She chose the predator.
6 months later, Victor and Grace have this lavish, over-the-top wedding. And this, right here, is where the betrayal of trust reaches its absolute, sickening peak. During her reception speech, Grace briefly thanks a man named Daniel, who sacrificed to put her through school. Victor's predatory instincts immediately kick in. He asks her who she meant, and when she confirms it was Daniel from the market, Victor just smiles. It was the smile of a man realizing he had just stolen Daniel's future for a second time. The woman he was marrying was groomed, educated, and delivered to him on the dime of the very man he crushed years ago.
You really have to think about the psychological weight of that. How do you survive a stolen future twice, perpetrated by the exact same guy? Most people would completely collapse, right? They'd become incredibly bitter, or just let that kind of deep hurt permanently rewire how they view the world. But Daniel decided to do something extraordinary. He chose to use that immense pain as a catalyst to completely rewire his approach to business and life, refusing to let someone else's complete lack of character dictate his own. The first thing he did, he stopped being silent. With his best friend Joseph's help, they took Daniel's original, handwritten notebook straight to a business journalist. And they didn't just expose Victor's theft of Daniel's idea. The journalist actually dug deep and uncovered a massive, ongoing pattern of Victor's stealing ideas and discarding trusting people. When the article dropped, it didn't completely bankrupt a wealthy guy like Victor, but it placed a permanent, ugly stain on his previously unquestioned reputation. Investors started asking hard questions, partners hit pause, and his predatory machine finally stuttered. Then, 3 years later, Daniel launched a brand new, significantly smarter distribution network. His new blueprint took the brutal lesson Victor taught him about blind trust and actively applied it. We're talking ironclad legal contracts, strictly vetted and trusted partners, and meticulously documented agreements. This time around, every single transaction was legally armored. There was absolutely no way anyone could ever pull the rug out from under him again. He built something incredibly real, and most importantly, it was entirely his.
Sometime later, Joseph asked Daniel a pretty heavy question. Did he regret paying for Grace's education after everything that happened? Daniel's response was profound. He said, "You can't let other people's failures become the reason you stop being yourself." He realized that the choice he made to help her was about who he was, not who she turned out to be. If he started making life decisions based on the fear of betrayal, he'd lose his core identity. He flat out refused to let Victor's predatory nature or Grace's smallness destroy his own inherent goodness.
Daniel learned that while Victor might have the money and the mansion, Victor will never ever sleep knowing he truly earned it without making someone else bleed. Daniel chose to let the pain teach him caution without stripping away his fundamental humanity. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this. If everything you built was used to hurt you, would you have the strength to keep your character intact and start building all over again?